Well, I absolutely love the ability to turn data into a table. It has huge advantages. It also has some disadvantages. There's some things you're going to want to do while your data is in a table and some that you're going to want to do when it isn't. Let's practice turning a range of data into a table and then converting it back to a normal range. The easiest way to get data to become a table is just to click inside of it, just like when you're creating a pivot table. When you say to format as table, and I'm on the Home tab now, um, when you pick a format that you want for your range, your marching ants are going to see the outlines of your data and they are going to presume that they just go to the edges. The other thing you have to be careful of is if you have headers or don't have headers. I would say don't make a table unless you've actually created these field names ahead. So you'll probably always want this table has headers information in it. I'm going to say OK. And now two things or three things, or actually a whole bunch of things happen all at the same time. One is that you get some really great formatting. Another thing is it turns on these data filters. These data filter arrows come here, and even if you've got a table you can toggle them on and off. Sometimes you want to see them and sometimes you don't. Usually when you're working in a table you do want to see them. Well, and of course another thing that happens is that you get this great formatting on. It really helps you distinguish the lines from the so that your eye can read across. This is called banding when one row is light and the other is dark. And I'm just going to take you to the design tab and remind you that you can have banded rows or not. That toggles on and off. You can have banded columns or not. What you never want to do is have banded rows and columns. That just completely confuses the eyeball. Another thing you can do is have the totals row on here. You probably already know this, but it's important to know that you can count things. Like if you want to count how many pieces of how many departments rather, you can just put on a count underneath that row and we can see we have 71 records in this data table. And then if we filter for unique values, then we could have a count of how many departments. I'll take that count off right now. So having the table can make your data look good, can allow you to filter and sort. So for instance, let's sort by department. You can see that the sort's right there. And let's see what else. One of my favorite things about putting on a data table is if I need another column, I could say whatever it is right here in the column next to it. I'm going to just say fake, and my imagination's failing me. So here's a column, and notice that it incorporated this column right into my data table. Now that's a brilliant thing because it means I don't have to spend time copying. And if I put a formula in here, like let's say I say equals maintenance cost, and I'm just clicking equal sign and then tabbing over times 0.1. I'll say 10% of maintenance cost. I don't know why I'd want to figure that, but now this, while we're here, notice that this is a really strange looking formula. And when I talked about the disadvantages of working in a table, one of the disadvantages is that it can make your formulas look incomprehensible. So I'm going to talk about that more in a minute. But I'm going to just press enter, and I apparently made a mistake of some kind. I wonder if I shouldn't have put yeah, they didn't want a parentheses. So notice that when I put in my formula and pressed enter, it also copied that formula down. It knows that every row in a table is likely to want to have the same exact thing going on in each row. So huge advantages to working in a table, and also some disadvantages. When I look at this formula up here, even though I understand it, it's much harder to get my head around. Well, I'm going to do some undos, and I'm going to show you what it's like to add a column of data and then convert to a range and then add a formula. Actually, I could go back. I'll do 10%. Okay, and so now that I've got that column in there and it's already formatted and everything, if I want to work a formula in here, but I need to really be able to think about it and to comprehend what that formula is going to look like, instead of continuing on with my data in a table, I'm going to convert it back to a normal range. To do that, I go to the Table Tools, that contextual tab, to the Design tab, and I go over here to Convert to Range. When I click on this and say yes, it really looks as if I'm still in a table, but I'm not. And one of the ways I know I'm not is that when I click inside of this area, there's no Table Tools tab. Okay, and another way that I know I can is when I want to put in a formula, so equals, and then click on a cell. Look at how normal this formula is looking. So times 0.1, and again, when I press enter, it's not copying down. Okay, now are you listening? Because I'm going to show you a trick that I love so much, and I know you're going to love it too if you don't know about it already. When you're in a data range and you want to copy a formula down, but you don't want to grab the little copy or fill icon at the lower right and slide down with your mouse like that, and I'm just going to undo that. Here is the really efficient way to copy a formula down. It works when there are no breaks of rows in your data. What you do is you put your pointer over the fill button and you double click. Click, click. And notice that I don't have to even wonder where's my data ending. I don't have to slide down and hope that I don't slide past where I want to go with my mouse. It's just going to automatically fill in the rest of that column. Now, because I'm not in a table anymore, it copied the formatting, and I like banded rows. Do you see that it's copied all filled in dark green so that my rows aren't banded nicely anymore? As soon as you filled an area, you're going to see this little icon right here. It's the autofill options, and you probably already know that as soon as you finished filling, you can control what happened. I can fill without formatting, I can fill with formatting only, or I can copy cells. In this case, I want to say fill without formatting, and now I continue to have my nice banded rows formatted. Well, what if I want to turn this into a table again? Can I do that? Sure. I'm going to choose the Home tab again and Format as Table, and I would just click New Table. I would click this one. I think that's the style I had before. Now, sometimes when you're going to turn a formatted table into a table again, you can get conflicts in the formatting. So in real life, and since I'm trying to teach you the way I work, what I would do is I'd select the entire thing by clicking on this corner here and choosing the fill button and saying no fill. Okay, and now I would format it as a table again, and I don't have a conflict with the formatting that was in there before. The fill of that table got deleted, and now I have room to reformat it. And you can see I'm back in a table. It's going to act like a table. I can add and edit data columns, things like that. Okay, one last thing I want to mention. If I want to make a calculation, like set up an isolated assumption, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see better. If I put something right next to my data, you can see that it wants to incorporate it into the table. So let's say I want to put a, instead of having the 10% column here work like this, I don't have an isolated assumption. In other words, in this formula, I'm saying multiply the number here by 10%. Well, if I am trying to figure out the tax on maintenance, and I'm going to relabel this tax, my tax rate could change, right? It could change all the time. So instead, what I want is an isolated assumption, and I'm going to say tax rate. And then I'm going to have a cell right here, and I'll make it cell M2 that holds my tax rate today. And that way, instead of these formulas all not adjusting every time the tax changes, if they look to this cell here, an isolated assumption, then it will change automatically when I change the tax rate in this cell. So let's say today my tax rate is 8.9%. And I'll just format that nicely. Format cells. Let's see, I'll do that. I don't think I can see that very well, so I'm going to put on some black and make it bold. and make it a little bigger. Okay, that's better. So here's my tax rate isolated in this cell here, M2. So I'm going to get rid of what's in these cells right here. And instead of making a formula that says take this number and multiply it by 0.10, I'm going to say take this number and multiply it by M2, that number over there. So today I can calculate a tax rate of 8.9, but if it changes, all I have to do is type in my 9.9 or whatever it turns into. In Washington State, who knows how high it could go. So let's do that. Equals, and I'm going to click on this cell here, times this cell here. Now, M2 has gone into my formula as a relative cell reference. That won't work if it copies down because it'll start looking to M3, M4, M5 like that. So while I'm still typing the formula and I've just put in M2, I'm going to hit the F4 key to make it an absolute cell reference so that it continues to look at that exact column, that exact row as it copies down. Okay, time to press enter. And I don't know why it's not copying down, but look at that, worked perfectly. I'm going to do my double click trick and let's see what this is saying here. That's good. And I do have a little inconsistent cell warning here, and the truth is I could ignore this. I don't know why it thinks it's inconsistent. I think you know, I think it's because it is looking outside of the table to an isolated assumption. And if this was real data that I was working with and I saw that, I would select all the cells that have that little green warning indicator, and I would go up to the top, I'd click on it, and I'd tell it ignore the error. And then all those cells would be cleared of their little error warning. Okay, well, that's some of my best table advice. Remember, if you want it to be a table, home, format as table. If you want it not to be a table, design, convert to range, and yes. Okay? All right. See you online.